Hi there, my name's Danny. This is the fourth module of 10 that I'll be sharing here on YouTube for my full course on Quasar Framework version 1. Let's start building the awesome To-Do app now. In this module, we're going to do some initial setup. So we're going to set up some pages and routes. We're going to set up some navigation links in the drawer for desktop. We're going to set up tab navigation at the bottom for mobile. We're going to add some style, and we're going to do a little bit of customization with the theme builder. Okay, let's set up some pages and routes for our app. For now, we're just going to set up two pages, a to-do page and a settings page. But before we do that, let's just get rid of all the Vue.js stuff we did before. So in the source folder and then components, I'm going to delete the task.vue file. We don't need that anymore. And then if you go into pages and then index.vue, let's just get rid of everything inside the q-page element, so we just have a blank page. And we'll get rid of everything inside this export default object as well. Save that. Okay, we've now just got a blank page. Right, now we want to open the routes.js file, which is in the router folder here. So open that up. And this is where all the routes for our app go. So we have this first route here with the path /, which points to the layout file for the app, mylayout.vue. Now, I don't really like the fact that it's called my layout. I'd rather it was just called layout. So I'm going to rename that to just layout.vue. And this will break the app because we then need to rename the layout page. So if we go into layouts and then rename my layout.vue to just layout.vue. Okay, back to the routes page. So we have this children array here. And this is where the paths to all our pages will go. So we have this first route here, which just leads to the index.vue file. So this page is going to be the to-do page. So I'm actually going to rename that to page to-do. And now if I go into the pages folder, and then I'll rename index.vue to page to-do, just to make it clearer exactly what that page is for. Okay, now back to the routes.js file. I'm just going to break this object up onto multiple lines to make it a bit clearer. And then I'm going to duplicate this route and create a route for the settings page. So I want the settings page to be at the URL /settings. So in this path property, I can just put /settings. And the component I want that to point to is going to be called page settings. So I'll change this page to-do.vue to page settings.vue. Save that. That now breaks the app because this page doesn't exist yet. So if we go into the pages folder, I'm just going to duplicate the page to-do.vue file and name that page settings.vue. Okay, so we now have a to-do page and a settings page. So let's just open up the page to-do page and we'll stick a paragraph in there that says to-do page. Okay, we can now see that on the page. And then if we open up page settings.vue, I'll stick a paragraph on there as well. And this will say settings page. Save that. Okay, so how can we get to this settings page? Well, remember in routes.js, we set up a route for the settings page and we set the path to /settings. So in the address bar, we can just simply put settings at the end of that. And you can now see we're on the settings page because this paragraph says settings page. Now if I hit back, then we're back to the to-do page. This app isn't going to be much fun if we have to manually type in the links to our pages. So let's add some navigation links in the drawer here on the side. So let's open up the layout file in layouts and then layout.vue. If we scroll down to this q-drawer element, that refers to the whole of this grey drawer that's on the side. So this label at the top, essential links, which you can see up here, let's change that to navigation. Save that. That now says navigation. These Q-item elements, they refer to these items here. So I'm going to remove all except the first one. Save that. Okay, we now just have one navigation item here. So let's change this into a link to our to-do page. So first of all, let's change the label in this Q-item label element from docs to to-do. And we'll get rid of this sub-label that's underneath that, because we don't really need that. And now we could do with a more appropriate icon for this link. And within Quasar, we have access to all of the material icons. So if you just Google material icons, and then jump to this page, material.io/tools/icons, we can see all of the material icons here. And you can search for them up here. So if I just search for, let's say, list, then we can see an appropriate icon here. And this class name, list, what we can do is, if you jump back to layout.view and look at this Q-icon element, we can just change this name property to the class name we see here, which is list. Save that. And now the icon is updated. So how can we get this link to our to-do page? Well, first of all, I'm just going to break up all of these attributes on the Q-item element onto multiple lines. I'm going to get rid of the href, target, and tag attributes. Now, to create a link to a page within your app, what you can do is you can add a to attribute. And we can just set that to the path of the page we want to go to. And the path of the to-do page is just slash. It's just at the root of the app. So if I put slash in there and save it, then this should now link to our to-do page. And we can test that out by just quickly jumping to the settings page by typing /settings manually. And now if I click on this link, we're now back on the to-do page. So that's working now. Okay, so let's duplicate this Q-item element and create a link for the settings page. Save that. We'll change the label to settings. Now let's find an icon for the settings page. So I'll jump back to that material icons page, search for settings. This one looks pretty good. And that just has the class name settings. So on this settings link and this Q-icon element, I can just change the name to settings. Save that. Now to get this to go to the settings page, I need to change this to attribute to /settings. Save that. Now let's see if that link works. Click on the settings link. Yeah, we're now on the settings page. Click on the to-do link. We're now back on the to-do page. Now, one thing you might notice is that the active classes on these links are a little bit messed up. So if we're on the to-do page, then it looks okay. The to-do link has an active class on it. But if we click on the settings page, you can see that the to-do link still has the active class on it. So how can we fix that? Well, we can fix that by adding a exact attribute to this Q-item element. And we'll add that to both of these. And what that means is this Q-item element will only appear active if we're currently viewing the exact page that this link refers to. So let's just have a click on these links. Yeah, they look okay now. And they're navigating successfully to both of our pages. Now, since we only have two main pages on our app, it'd be good if on mobile we could just show tab navigation for these pages down at the bottom. So how can we do that? Well, first of all, we're going to need a footer element in this layout. So let's jump to the Quasar site at quasar-framework.org. If version 1 is still in beta, then we'll need to click this red link. to get to the version 1 page. And then we want to click on Get Started. Right, so now if we go to Layout and Grid on the side here, and then Layout Header and Footer, you can see here that in order to use the header and footer, we need to specify them in this quasar.conf.js file. So let's do that first. So that file is just in the root of your project here, quasar.conf.js. We'll open that up, and you can see a list of components here that are going to be available in the project. Now QHeader is already there, but QFooter is not, so let's add that to the bottom there. I'll leave a gap here so we can see which ones we've actually added to the project. Right, save that. Now back on the Quasar page, if I scroll down to basic usage here and click on this view source button, we can see some code for the footer there. So I'll grab that, and back to the layout.view file, underneath this q-header element, I'll paste in that footer. And I'll get rid of this elevated directive. I'll get rid of the toolbar. And I'll just stick the word footer in there so we can see it on the page. Okay, so we can now see the footer on the page. We now need some tabs. So let's jump back to the Quasar page and look for some tabs. So if we go to View Components, scroll down, here we go, tabs. Okay, it tells us here what we need to add to the config file. So we need to add qtabs, qtab, and qroot tab. So I'll copy that and paste those into our components array here. Save that. Now let's find some code for some basic tabs. So if I go to usage and then basic, these ones at the top look okay. So I'll click on the view source button and copy the markup for those first tabs. And we can just paste those inside our footer. Save that. Okay, they're all kind of green colored at the moment. That's because of this class here, text teal. So I'm going to remove that class. I'm going to remove that V model as well. So we're not going to need a model for these tabs. Save that. That looks a bit better. So I'm just going to delete the bottom two tabs. I'm going to split these attributes onto multiple lines. And we'll add a link to the to-do page first. So I'll change the label to to-do. Change the icon to list, which we used in the draw down here. And I'll get rid of that name attribute. We don't need that. Click Save. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's add another one for the settings page now. So I'll just duplicate that q-tab element. Change the label to settings. Change the icon to also settings in lowercase. Save that. Okay, we can now see our tabs on the page. So how can we get these to link to the pages of our app, like these links in the draw do? Well, let's try adding a to attribute like we did in the draw and see if that works. So for the to do tab, that just wants to go to /, and then for the settings tab, that wants to go to /settings. Save that. Let's see if that's working. Doesn't seem to be working. Why is that? Let's jump back to the tabs page on the Quasar site. And if we look at the contents here over on the right, you can see a section that says connecting to Vue Router. Let's click on that. It says here you can use tabs together with Vue Router through qroot tab component. This component inherits everything from qtab, however it also has router link properties bound to it. These allow for listening to the current app route and also triggering a route when clicked or tapped. So it looks like we basically just need to change these q-tab elements into q-root-tab elements. So let's do that. Change these both to q-root-tab. Save that. Hopefully that's working now. So if I click on the settings tab, yeah, we're now on the settings page. Click on the to-do tab, we're now on the to-do page. You can also see that when we navigate using these tabs, the active classes over here on the drawer are also updated, which is pretty good. Let's say at some point in the future we want to add a new page to our app. Well, right now we would have to add a link in two different places. We'd have to add a new link to the drawer section and then a new link to the tab section as well. Well, what we could do is we could consolidate this information into an array and output these links based on that array. So let's do that now. So let's jump down to the script section, and within the data object we'll add an array for our navigation items. So we'll call that navs. This will be an array, and we'll create an object for each navigation item. And this is going to have three properties. Label for the name that appears on the link, icon, which will be the icon class name for the icons, and to, which will be the URL that the link points to. So we'll set up the to-do navigation first. So the label is to-do, the icon is list, and the to is slash, because that's just at the root of our app. We'll duplicate this object and we'll set up an item for the settings navigation. So the label will be settings, and the icon will also be settings, lowercase, and the to will be slash settings. Now if we just jump up to the q-draw component, here's our two q-item elements, which are these here. I'll delete the second one, and this first one I'll add a v4 directive to it, v-4, and we want to loop through this array we've created here, which is called navs. So we could just do v-4 nav in navs. And then we can make this to attribute dynamic by adding a colon to the start, and then we can just set the contents of that to nav.to. And then we can do the same with the q-icon component. We can just set this name attribute to colon name, and then in the quotes we can just put nav.icon. And then for the label we can just use double curly braces, and in there we can just put nav.label. I'll save that. Okay, we still see our navigation links on the page, and they're still working, except now they're being pulled from this array down here. Let's do the same to the tab navigation items here. So inside the q-footer component, I'll get rid of the second tab, add a v4 directive to the first one, v-4, and again nav in navs, and then we'll just add a colon to the start of these attributes and set to nav.to, set the icon to nav.icon, set the label to nav.label. Save that. Okay, tabs still look okay. They still work when we click them, which is good. Except now, again, they're being pulled from this array. So now, if we want to add a new page to our app, we only have to do this once. So just as an example here, I'll create a new object, set the label to about, icon, info, and to set that to /about. Save that. Okay, and you can see that link has now been added to both of our navigation sections. Now before we move on, let's just get rid of this about item. Since creating these v for loops, we now have a couple of warnings in the console that say, component lists rendered with v4 should have explicit keys. Do you remember how we fixed that? We fixed it by adding a key property to our v4 loops. So I'll first do the draw v4 loop. So we can just add a key property, and we can just set this to nav.label, because our labels in this case will always be unique. We're not going to have pages which have the same name. And I'll add the same to the tabs as well here. So key equals nav.label. Save that, refresh the page, and now those warnings have disappeared. Now currently we can see both the side navigation, the draw navigation, and the tabs navigation on the page at the same time. This isn't what we want. Really, we just want to show the side navigation on, say, tablet and desktop, and only show the tabs navigation on mobile devices. So how can we show and hide these depending on the width of the browser? Well, if we jump to the Quasar page again, and we go to Layout and Grid, and then Layout Draw, and we jump down to the QDraw API right at the bottom, we have a list of props here that we can add to this QDraw component, one of which is the breakpoint prop. And it says here, breakpoint in pixels of layout width, up to which mobile mode is used. So we can use this prop to set the width at which the draw will disappear. So let's jump back to our awesome to-do app. And in layout.view, we'll jump to the Q-draw component, and we'll add a new prop called breakpoint. Now we want this draw to only appear on devices which are, say, portrait tablets and over. So typically the minimum width for a tablet in portrait is 768 pixels. So we can just set this breakpoint prop to 767, which means that as the browser gets smaller, once it reaches 767, it should disappear. Let's just save that and see if that's working. So I'm zoomed in a little bit here, so I'm going to set the zoom back to normal. I'll open up the inspector and I'll undock this. Okay, so the drawer is currently showing. We're at a width of about 1200 or so pixels. Let's see what happens as we scale it down. Okay, so once we get below 768, it disappears. Great. Okay. However, the footer is still showing all the time, and unfortunately there's no breakpoint property for the footer. So we're going to have to add some style to hide this. So we'll jump down to the style section and we'll create a media query at media screen and then in brackets min width 768 pixels. So in other words, if the browser is at least 768 pixels wide, then we want to hide this footer element. So I'm just going to inspect this element. I'll just redock this inspector. And we can see the footer element here. It has a class of Q-footer. So we can use that class to hide this footer. So back to this style section, in this media query, I'll add Q-footer. And then we can just do display none. Okay, let's see if that's working. Okay, the tabs have now disappeared. But if I shrink down the view to below 768, then hopefully those tabs should reappear. There we go. We now have tabs for mobile and a sidebar for desktop and tablets. Let's add a bit of style to this layout to make it look a bit less generic. So the first thing I want to do is I want this header to always go across the top of the app with this navigation push below it. Now if we go to layout.view, on the Q-layout element, you can see this view prop, which has these funny looking characters in it. And these characters are what determine whether you have a left draw, whether you have a right draw, whether the header is right at the top, whether the footer is right at the bottom, etc. And we can change this using the layout builder. So if we jump back to the Quasar page and we go to layout and grid and then layout, scroll down a bit, you can see this layout builder button here. So we click that. First of all, you choose all the things that you want. So we want a Q header, we want a Q footer, we want a left side draw, we don't want a right side draw, so I'll disable that. We don't want these navigation tabs at the top, so I'll disable that. Then we click continue, and then you have these little options here. So up in this header, if we click on this L icon, you can see the left draw is pushed right to the left side. But if we click the H, then the header is at the top above the left draw. So we'll leave that like that. And we want the footer to be the same. So we'll click this F for the footer. So that's right at the bottom. And then we can just click on Export Layout. And then this pops up. And then we don't want to grab all this markup. We just want to grab this view property here. So I'll copy that. And then back in layout.view, I'll just paste that in here. Now if I hit save, you can now see the header is all the way along the top now. Now let's tidy up this header a little bit. So back in layout.view, first of all, I'm going to get rid of this Quasar V1 beta thing here, which is this div here. So I'll delete that. I'll change the title to Awesome To Do. And it'd be good if this title was in the center of the header. So I'm going to add a class to this Q toolbar title element of absolute center. Now this absolute center is one of the many helper classes built into Quasar. Let me just see if I can find where I found this class. So if we go to style and identity and then positioning, and you can see a bunch of CSS positioning classes here. And you can see this one there, absolute center. Set position to absolute, but in the middle of the container. Okay, so this toggle button, we don't really need that anymore. I would like it so that we always have navigation present on the page. And since we have the sidebar for desktop and the tabs for mobile, I don't think we really need this, so I'm just going to remove this completely. And that's this Q-button element here. So I'll get rid of that, save that. Also, I'm not really a big fan of this glossy effect on the toolbar. So if we look at the Q-header element, we have this class glossy. I'm just going to remove that. Save that. That's looking a bit better. Now let's tidy up the drawer a little bit. So first of all, it's a little bit too wide because these links that we have are not very wide. So I'm going to shrink down the width of this a little bit. So if we jump to the Q draw element, there's a prop called width that we can use here to set the width of it. I'm going to set that to 250. Okay, that looks a bit better. Also, I'd like the draw to be the same color as the toolbar. So how can we do that? Well, if you look at the QDraw element, we have this content class. And this is basically the background color class that's being applied to this draw. And you can see all of these classes on the Quasar page if you go to style and identity and then color palette. So you've got all different color classes here. I'm just going to set this to the primary background color, which at the moment is this blue color here. So I'm going to set this content class to BG primary to make it the primary color. Save that. Okay, so it's now blue, but all these links look a bit funny now. What we can do is this QList element, which is inside the QDraw, we can add a prop of dark to that. Save that. Okay, so these navigation links are a bit messed up now. First of all, I'm just going to set the default color for these to a gray color. So if I go to the Q-item element, I'll add a class of text gray 4, which you can see here on that page we're on. Okay, so they're kind of a gray color, but we have no style for the active class. So let's add some style for that. If I just click on to do, so this should be the active link now. If I inspect that, just drag this out a little bit. Now if you look in the inspector, let's find this Q-item element. Okay, here it is. You can see this class, Q router link exact active here. This class will only be applied to the currently active link. So I'm going to copy that class and jump back to layout.view. We'll jump down to the style section. And we want to style this link, but only within the draw. So I'll add Q-draw. And then within that element, I'll add that class I just copied, Q router link exact active. And we'll set that to color white important. Save that. So we now have an active class for our draw links. Okay, this is looking a lot better now. I like to use SCSS for styling. So for example, these styles we've just added here for the draw navigation. It'd be good if I could write this like this. So that it could nest elements like this. But if I save that, our styles are now broken. We need to add support for SCSS. So how do we do that? So if we jump to the Quasar page again, and I'll search for SCSS, we see a link here, Webpack Loaders, SAS, SCSS. I'll click that. So you want to be able to write SAS or SCSS code. You need a loader for it. We first install it. Okay. So we need to install these two packages before we can use SCSS within our Quasar project. It's telling us to use yarn to do that here. I don't think I have yarn installed, so I'm just going to install these with npm. So I'm going to copy that bit. I'm going to jump back to the console. I'm going to close this process with Control-C. Then I'm going to run npm install -- save dev so that it saves this as a dependency. And then SAS loader and node SAS. Hit enter. Okay, they're installed now. So let's just clear the console and we'll get our project running again. Quasar dev. Okay, so the SCSS is still not working. And there's one thing we need to do. Back in layout.view, on the style tag here, we just need to add lang equals SCSS. Save that. Okay, and now our SCSS styles are working. Let's customize the colors of our theme a little bit. Now the Quasar site actually has a theme builder built in, so let's have a little look at that. If we jump back to the Quasar site and go to Style and Identity, and then Theme Builder, we have this little theme builder here where we can choose the colors for the primary, secondary, accent, positive, negative, info, and warning. You can change all of these different colors. For now, I'm just going to change the primary color, but feel free to change a few of them if you want. So I'm going to click on this primary button, and I already have a color code that I want to use for the primary color, which is this one, 4682B4, this blue color. Close that. You can choose a different color if you want. It's up to you. But once you've finished customizing this theme, you can click on Export, and you get this little pop-up here. And then you can just copy this And then back in your project, if you go to source, CSS, you should see a quasar.variables.style file. So you want to open that, and then you can just paste over these variables here with the ones you just copied. So I'll paste that in, jump back to my app in the browser. Now when I hit save, the theme is updated. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment to let me know what you think. And if you're interested in the full course, click the link in the description. In the next video, we're going to create a list of tasks using various Quasar components. We're going to add a name, a due date, and a due time to each task. We're going to add the ability to mark them as completed. We're also going to add some styles to make them look beautiful.